Hello, friends, and welcome to English Time with Kyle Miller. Yes, today we start a new voyage with a program, a class, if you will, an opportunity to practice your English and to practice our English together in this radio show and podcast. We're going to get started right away with a little challenge, with a bit of translation, as I often do. I love translating sentences, so let's begin today with some translation, and then we're going to practice some interrogative, forming some questions based around a topic to start off today's show. And today we're going to learn about Christopher Columbus, Cristóbal Colón. Yes, so let's begin, and I'm going to give you some sentences of translation en voz alta. I need you to translate these out loud, okay? So number one, Cristóbal Colón fue un explorador. Christopher Columbus was an explorer. And that's right, Christopher Columbus was an explorer. Colón nació en Génova en 1451. Columbus was born in Genoa, we say Genoa, in 1451. 1451, that's true. Él quería encontrar una nueva ruta a Asia. He wanted to find a new route to Asia. Asia. Notice I don't say as. I say a. Asia. Hey. Asia. Yes, he wanted to find a new route to Asia. Los reyes católicos financiaron su viaje. The Catholic monarchs financed his voyage. Yes, los reyes católicos, we don't normally say the Catholic kings. We typically say the Catholic monarchs. The Catholic monarchs financed his voyage. Y fíjate, voyage, no es voyage, sino voyage. So we're starting with a V, which is really like an F, una F vocalizada. ¿Vale? Empezamos con sonido F. Y activamos las cuerdas vocales. Voyage, ¿ok? Colón salió de España en agosto de 1492. Columbus left Spain in August 1492. 1492. 1492. Sus barcos se llamaban La Niña, La Pinta y La Santa María. His ships were called La Niña, La Pinta, and the Santa Maria. A couple more. We'll do a few more. We'll do up to 10, all right? Vamos a hacer 10. Let's do 10 sentences. Cuando llegó al Caribe, pensó que había llegado a Asia. When he arrived in the Caribbean, hay gente que dice Caribbean y otros que digan Caribbean. Caribbean. You can say it either way. When he arrived in the Caribbean, he thought he had reached Asia. So, llegar a un sitio, to arrive, y también se dice to reach. He thought he had reached, con ese T fuerte, reached Asia. Reached se escribe con D, claro, pero palabras que acaban con CH, en pasado, solemos decir reached Asia. Colón hizo 4 viajes al Nuevo Mundo durante su vida. Columbus made 4 voyages to the New World during his life, durante su vida. He made 4 voyages. So we have the word trip, un viaje, can be a trip. And remember, trip es un sustantivo. To make a trip or to take a trip or to go on a trip, pero es sustantivo. we have the verb viajar, el verbo, which is to travel, okay? But we also have a voyage, which is like a trip, in the sense that es un sustantivo. But typically, a trip is ida y vuelta, ¿vale? Whereas a voyage is, bueno, puede ser ida y vuelta. En este caso es ida y vuelta también. But it is more related to something greater, implying discovery, implica a great distance. So a trip can be, well, let's go to Salamanca for the afternoon or for one day. To me, that's a trip. But a voyage it maybe implies discovery. It implies a greater distance, more significant. Okay? So he made 4 voyages to the New World during his life. Okay? Now, 2 más y ahora más complicados, más avanzados, okay? So these are for the English superstars out there, a little more challenging. Aunque no sabía que había descubierto un nuevo continente, su viaje cambió la historia. Although he didn't know he had discovered the new continent, his voyage changed history. Yes, although. You could also say even though, aunque, although or even though he didn't know he had discovered a new continent, his voyage changed history. History. Okay, now the last one, la última, and maybe the most advanced. Si los reyes católicos no hubieran financiado su expedición, Colón no habría cruzado el Atlántico. Así que ya sabemos que los reyes católicos serían the Catholic monarchs, M-O-N-A-R-C-H, monarch. If the Catholic monarchs had not financed his expedition, Columbus would not have crossed the Atlantic, or he wouldn't have crossed the Atlantic, we could say en 1492. He wouldn't have crossed the Atlantic in 1492. Okay? If the Catholic monarchs had not financed his expedition, we say the same, expedition, Columbus would not have crossed the Atlantic in 1492. Muy bien. Okay. We say, in 1492, Columbus crossed the ocean blue. He sailed the ocean blue, or he crossed the ocean blue. 1492. It's the little rhyme to help kids remember the date of Columbus's voyage. So we're going to continue a little bit more, and now with my favorite exercise to help you develop agility with the interrogative form, mastering the interrogative. Okay, the interrogative challenge, if you will. Okay, so I'm going to give you the answer, and you can ask me the question, okay, the corresponding question. Number 1, Columbus's first voyage took place in 1492. And the question, when did Columbus's first voyage take place? When did Columbus's first voyage take place? Okay. Columbus's second voyage was focused on colonization. What was Columbus's second voyage focused on? What was Columbus's second voyage focused on? Columbus was financed by Spain. Who was Columbus financed by? Who was Columbus financed by? He was financed by Spain. Columbus introduced horses to the New World. What did Columbus introduce to the New World? Yeah, apparently he took horses when he came back. He brought a bunch of horses and introduced horses to the Americas. Okay, the last one. Columbus died in 1506. When did Columbus die? Yeah, he died in 1506. He was living in Valladolid. Vivía en Valladolid. when he died. Yeah, in May of 1506. And by that time, Columbus he wasn't this great celebrated figure that he had been before, although he had completed by that time 4 voyages across the Atlantic. But there had been complaints about the way he governed, the way he ruled things in the Caribbean, and he was actually arrested and sent back to Spain, although later he was freed and he made his 4th voyage, his final voyage, but he never regained his position as governor in the New World, and he came back to Spain. He lived part of the time in Seville, I believe, and then also Valladolid, going back and forth, and he was pushing the government to restore his privileges and for a share of profits from the new territories that he had discovered. But he died still convinced that he had reached the outskirts of Asia, never realizing that he had encountered a previously unknown continent. And he died without receiving the wealth really in his lifetime that he expected. But of course, his voyages certainly reshaped global history and remains one of the most prominent figures in history, of course. And now for something entirely different, we're going to get into a part of the show where we talk about different things. We talk about a business, a company, or a person. Today we're going to talk about the story of Burger King. A lot of people have talked, myself included, about the story of McDonald's, but I want to tell the story of Burger King today. A story that began in 1953 in Miami, Florida, with one small restaurant called Burger King. The founders were James McLemore and David Edrington. And they were young entrepreneurs with very big ideas and one very interesting piece of technology called the Broiler. Now, to broil is like asar, como asador, instantáneo. So it was a machine that would cook the meat very quickly. And this machine cooked burgers faster than ever before, and it gave them an edge, una ventaja, in this growing fast food world. Customers could get a hot, juicy burger in just minutes, something that felt almost magical at the time. By the way, McDonald's at this point had already started. They began in 1940 as a tiny drive-in, differentiated by their speed of cooking and delivering fast food. Now, as for Burger King, by the late 1950s, Burger King was facing financial problems, and these founders that I mentioned, McLemore and Edrington, saw an opportunity. They purchased the company, and they decided to redesign it from the ground up, from the bottom to the top. And their vision was very simple: to serve very tasty, high-quality burgers quickly and make the experience something very memorable. So they focused on the flame-broiled strategy, flame broiling their patties. So cocinando, so we said broiling, like asando, but with a flame, con llama, no? A method that gave their burgers a smoky, rich flavor that really stood out from competitors who were frying their burgers on flat grills. Now, by 1959, the first official Burger King opened in Miami. And from the very beginning, these owners were innovators. They wanted their restaurant to feel modern. They wanted it to be inviting, and more than anything, they wanted the food to taste good. One of the earliest moves that they did was the creation of the Whopper, the famous Whopper, and this was 1957. A burger larger than anything else on the market. It wasn't just a meal, it was like a statement, bigger, bolder, and it was ready to challenge competitors like McDonald's in the fast food market. the Whopper became a symbol of Burger King's identity, customization, and choice. So at the time, you could choose what you wanted on your Whopper. Now, unlike a lot of competitors, Burger King felt that customers should have a say how their burgers were made. And they had this philosophy that later went into their slogan, have it your way, right? Tenerlo a tu manera, no? Which was a campaign to promote the idea of giving people freedom to choose toppings and build the burger that they wanted. It was a simple idea, but it worked very well. Americans liked this, and Americans wanted control over what they were eating. So the expansion came quickly, but it was done very carefully as well. Burger King, like McDonald's, took on the franchise model. So with franchises, franquicias, they allowed local entrepreneurs to open and operate their own restaurants under the brand. Now, by the 1960s, Burger King had begun to spread across the United States. Each new location had the same flame-broiled taste and the same sort of environment inside, something that McDonald's was doing as well, creating this idea that when you go to one of their restaurants, you know not only what the food will be like, but also what the environment will be like. Como es el aspecto físico dentro el ambiente. No? So throughout the 1970s and 80s, Burger King continued to innovate. They experimented with new menu items, creative advertising, and very interesting promotions. Now, McDonald's was much bigger, but Burger King positioned itself as the alternative, kind of a rebellious alternative, a brand that didn't follow the rules. It sort of made its own rules. It did things differently. And this was an approach that worked very well in the 70s and 80s in the fast food market. Now, ownership changes and corporate mergers hit the company as they were sold. Macklemore and Edrington sold the company, but their vision lived on with the same idea, the same style of cooking food, and Burger King kept evolving. They understood that to compete with other brands, they had to stand out. Tenían que destacar. They had to stand out, either through burgers like the Whopper and special campaigns, or communicating this idea of flexibility, letting their customers customize their meals. Now, by the 1990s and into the 21st century, Burger King had become really a global icon. They had tens of thousands of locations, more than 100 countries, and their burgers, especially the Whopper, and that slogan, have it your way, tenlo a tu manera, no? Was synonymous with choice, with flavor, and with the image that they really wanted to portray. Now, over the years, Burger King went through several ownership changes. Today, it's owned by Restaurant Brands International, which is a parent company that also owns Tim Hortons and Popeyes, as you say in Spain, Popeye, Popeyes Chicken. And under RBI, Burger King has expanded aggressively, even more, opening thousands of restaurants across Europe, Asia, Latin America, and throughout the world. So what started with an instant broiler and two very ambitious founders has grown into a global giant. So there you have it, a bit of the story of Burger King. And I've told the McDonald's story before on other radio programs, but I thought it would be interesting to consider the story of two young entrepreneurs and their vision for something different that would become Burger King. Now, let's look at some vocabulary that we can see in the burger world, especially vocabulary related to cooking. So we have to grill And Burger King says flame broiled, like asada a la parrilla, pero con llama, no? So this is flame broiled, flame broiling, or also grilling. So we sometimes say, like in Canada, people will say to barbecue as a verb. But if you go to Texas, they will use barbecue as a noun. Es sustantivo ahí. They would say, oh, we're having barbecue. And that is like often slow-cooked meat like brisket and different types of beef, okay? Okay, so we have, of course, to fry, freír, to cook in hot oil. Sizzle, this is a good adjective, to sizzle. Sizzle is when you have this hissing sound that comes from cooking, right? That sound of cooking something in a pan, or when the meat, the fat, is emitting a sound as it cooks. That's called sizzling. S-I-Z-Z-L-E, to sizzle. Now, toast as a verb, tostar, claro. So to toast the bun. I like a toasted bun myself. If I'm having a burger, if I'm making my own burger, I do like to toast my bun. I think it's es un detalle, right? It's a nice touch. We also have to flip, of course, que es dar la vuelta. It's like when you're cooking a tortilla, hay que saber dar la vuelta. Cuándo, cómo hacerlo, y cuándo hacerlo, right? When and how to flip. To flip something. We also have the phrasal verb there, to turn over. To flip it over, to turn it over. All right. And then the verb to melt, right? Fundir, to melt. So cheese melts. You can melt your cheese onto your burger, for example. Fundir, to melt. We have some different verbs here, to melt and also to thaw. T-H-A-W. If you have a piece of chicken, for example, that's frozen, pollo congelado, that is on your, in your freezer, you take it out to become unfrozen. With meat, for example, we say to thaw, whereas to melt is con hielo, por ejemplo. The conversion of ice into water is melting, to melt, okay? Sprinkle, season or sprinkle. To add spices or salt, you can sprinkle them on. You can season your meat, que es también temporada, the season. But the verb to season, to add spices, maybe to add salt, like a chef seasons the patty with salt and pepper, okay, to season it. And then we have other cooking verbs, like to chop, cortar, to slice, cortar en lonchas, also to dice, cortar en literally dice, like dados. When you play a game, a board game, or you go to a casino, you have dice, los dados, no? So to cut into little pieces can be to dice, to chop, to slice, to dice. And then to layer. Layer, eso es una capa. Claro, como sustantivo, una capa is a layer. So the verb to layer is to put ingredients on top of each other. Right? To layer the lettuce, the tomato, and the cheese on the patty. Mm-hmm. So yes, the piece of beef that you have on a burger, we call a patty, a burger patty. Okay? Well, believe it or not, it might sound crazy, but we are actually going to finish our program for today. I know it's short. You might say, but Kyle, we want more. And I will be back with more. But we'll be talking about more companies and figures in history and people and places and things, and learning about people and places and things through the English language, and learning vocabulary and learning terminology and learning basic grammar through popular culture and sports and business and much more in future episodes of the show. So I'm going to finish there, but thanks for listening, and I'll see you again soon on another episode of English Time with Kyle Miller. Thanks for listening.